Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of the Legend of Zelda timeline. For those who don't know and are just seeing this video without any context, a long time ago, and I did that for subsequent years, I did for 3 years, I read the Hyrule Historia. The first time I read the book, and then when the digital version came out on the Wii U, I read that twice. One with an analytical opinion and one without. In one of those runs, I mentioned something where, and I know I'm a little late at the game, but when am I not? I mentioned that every time a new Zelda game comes out, and it's an official timeline game, I will mention it. I will talk about where and when in the timeline it takes place. Um, so, first off, I'm going to talk briefly about TriForce Heroes. Last time, the first game I ever did, but it was during reading the Hyrule Historia, because the game was out at the time while I was doing the series, was A Link Between Worlds. And the game took place right after A Link to the Past, which was obvious, because, that was made to be a sequel to that game. Starting off here, if people are curious, I'm not going to read the Zelda Encyclopedia. I already said I did not read the Artist Archive book because it's just mostly pictures. But the Encyclopedia does contain Breath of the Wild and Triforce Hero information. But I don't have time to do a series like that anymore. And since there's no digital version, I'm a little disappointed in that. Like the Switch doesn't want to make digital versions of all these books. And I have the Mario Encyclopedia. I'm actually hoping one day to read that for you guys, but I'm not gonna be able to do that. I kind of like the idea of having the digital version so I can show page by page on the screen. I can't do that with a book unless I scan each and individual page, which will take that'd be way too much. But like I said, I don't have time to do a series like that anyway these days. Life gets in the way and all that. But yeah, in this video, I'm going to talk about two games that were added to the timeline. Games that have been out for a while now, but the first game I'm going to mention is The Legend of Zelda TriForce Heroes. The game came out in the 3DS, and the game takes place in a in a kingdom that cares a lot about fashion. It's not really a core Zelda title. I actually am surprised it's on the timeline. But I'm looking at like it really is a sales image for digital sales. But I'm looking at it, and they added it to the timeline. Like there's no Zelda's crossbow training or nothing like that. But there it is. Triforce Heroes takes place after A Link Between Worlds and before the first Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo Entertainment System. But yeah, it's a simple cut and dry story, just made to be a fun little distraction. It was made to be more for a multiplayer experience. Link, the princess of this kingdom. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. To be honest with you, it's just not that important to me. I'm sure you guys don't care. I'm sure you guys want me to just get the Breath of the Wild already, but I do want to explain the story of the game, like I did for A Link Between Worlds, and I wanted to set up this formula here for the post reading the Hyrule Historia stuff. But yeah, the princess was cursed to wear these ugly clothes, and clothes were a lot in that kingdom. So Link wears different outfits for different abilities, and you fight in worlds. You go to different parts of the kingdom, which are, if you played Four Swords Adventures, it's the same type of gameplay, only with 3 characters instead of 4. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. In the end, you find out this woman that was helping you this whole time was the bad guy, and you end up defeating her, and you give the princess the ability to leave the castle again because she's wearing a beautiful dress again. It was fine. But yeah, here it is. It takes place after A Link Between Worlds. I don't think it's the same Link. I wouldn't think so because the one from Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, because the model, it's clearly a new model from the one. That's the only thing I can really go off of. I mean, for all we know, it could be the same Link. I mean, he might just be traveling around, so he has nothing else to do, look for a new adventure or whatever. But then again, I don't know. So yeah, moving on. The much more interesting thing here is A Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The game Now, when I first talked about the game, I actually had some theories. I talked about it where it could be in the timeline, and I like to do that. You know, all people like to do that when it comes to the Zelda timeline, but I thought it could either go after Zelda 2 or after Spirit Tracks. I said this because I felt like The Legend of Zelda um, Breath of the Wild being so open with this huge world is like, I felt like you can either go after Zelda 2 because in Zelda 2 Ganon was finally fully defeated, and Link has this, and like the lower Hyrule was rising again, it was becoming a whole fleshed out kingdom again, and Link got to explore that and discover that. Or I thought it'd be after Spirit Tracks, where this was part of New Hyrule, and Link had to discover the continent more and look around more because, you know, that's just what they were doing in Spirit Tracks, expanding the new Hyrule, discovering the new continent and all that. Now, the interesting thing is, in an interview, it was revealed that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is at the end of all three branching timelines. Now, I know the timeline can be controversial, and I know people don't like it. I'm actually a huge defender of the timeline. I think like, people can point out holes all day long, all they want. It is the timeline, and I'm not gonna be one of those snobs that if Nintendo says it, that's what it is. But I personally think it's a well-constructed timeline for what they had. Yes, there are gonna be some holes and some issues, but I think it works out really well. And I think those holes that people like to poke into the timeline are great because it gives the Nintendo a chance to make a Zelda game to fill that hole. You know, like I remember I also talked about where Hyrule Warriors would be for fun, and I thought Hyrule Warriors would be after Ocarina of Time and before A Link to the Past, because not Link to the Past, before Link's Awakening, because I thought it would be great to see maybe Link was just part of the army at that point, and he was adult Link and all that, you know. Um, but yeah, moving on. A lot of people are calling this out, saying, no, Nintendo never cared at the timeline, and that's probably true. I'm not going to lie there. That's probably true. But the thing is I love this decision because the three branched timelines that everybody hated is now one. And I don't know why a lot of people are complaining about that personally. I think it was a great move to say that. Like, yeah, you can just brush it off as, fine, it's in the back of all of them. Because Nintendo always... I'll be honest, I don't think Nintendo cares. I think they just made the timeline for the 25th anniversary because people were begging and clamoring for it, and then they complained and complained and complained about it. But, I think it's great because it does give us a chance to have a more serialized Zelda series. Because keep in mind, after Breath of the Wild came out, with all its raging success, Nintendo has said, we're going to keep making Zelda and open world games. So it really opens up the opportunity to make sequels to Breath of the Wild. You know, no more focusing on making whatever. And of course, Nintendo will always make different kind of games, you know, but this focus on the open world element of this new open world Zelda everybody loved, including myself, it's a good move, you know. On top of that, I think I might actually have an explanation for why it's at the end of all three timelines. For one thing, it does make sense. It's open enough where it does make sense. The story takes place where Link wakes up 100 years later after a catatonic state. He was put asleep in hopes that he can wake up again to defeat Phantom Ganon. Now, to talk about Phantom Ganon in all three timelines here is Spirit Tracks and Four Swords Adventures are simple enough. You know, Ganon just came back, yeah, or in a spiritual form after, and then after Zelda 2, another thing like maybe he's just a you just can't kill Ganon, because keep in mind, these reincarnations will always come back. They hold each piece of the Triforce. So Ganon being defeated in a physical form came back in a phantom form in all three instances of the timeline. And as always, oh, there's a hole here, there's a hole here, plot holes. Oh my god, plot holes. It can be filled with new games if they wish to. And that being said, I think the fact that Breath of the Wild, how does that work? How does that work? How does it mend three timelines together? For one thing, I had a theory a while ago that I want to put back. I think that where the branching timelines came from the fact that the original timeline, between the games of Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time, you messed with the links of those two games messed with the time-space continuum. And the way Ocarina of Time worked, it worked to a much greater extent than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild kept going back and forth between two timelines, but they were in much lesser of a extent than Ocarina of Time. So, you know, with all the amounts they messed with time and they poked around with time, it caused the three endings of Ocarina of Time to split into three, so all possibilities were true. You know, because Link created those branching timelines, and with that being said, you have the three: the one where Link was victorious and stayed an adult, the one where Link was victorious and stayed a child, and the one where Link was defeated in Ocarina of Time. And why I think Breath of the Wild works is, you know, obviously Link, he in Breath of the Wild, he woke up from that 100-year sleep. He went to the Phantom Ganon and he defeated him with the help. Along the way, he found his old allies he was battling with, and no matter what, that Link could have grown up in an older Hyrule. It could have been the one after Zelda 2. That could have been him, actually. That could be the original Link from Zelda 2. He could be a descendant from Spirit Tracks or a descendant from Four Swords, or he could be them too. It all comes together no matter what. And what I think happened was when Link was put into that sleep for 100 years, I think that being that he was the one messing the space-time continuum, this reincarnated version of Link mended the timelines together when he rested for 100 years. There wasn't another incarnation for 100 years. It gave the time-space continuum in the Zelda universe time to blend into one. And that's my theory on why that works that way. So that being said, I very much support the idea that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild takes place in the timeline and it's at the ends of all three branching timelines, creating one. We're now going to... And if Nintendo plays their cards right on this, and I'm confident they will, the Zelda games will be much more serialized games from this point forward. So, obviously, Nintendo will always do what they got to do, but they'll always keep in mind the timeline now is one stemming branch again, and I think it's a great move. So, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next Zelda game, official timeline Zelda game, I should say, and yeah, have a good one.